to be discussing the properties of the mixing method of the creaming method. And in baking, things really go by methodology. So we really want to focus through our instructional videos just about the different methodologies of leavening agents. And so today, I'm going to show you just a simple batch of chocolate chip cookies and how that's put together. To really dive in a little bit closer, take a look at exactly what it takes to make the creaming method up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mechanically soften our butter. Now, butter is one of the primary ingredients in our chocolate chip cookies, and with butter, the thing that recipes often refer to is to soften the butter. In softening the butter, people often mistake softening for putting it in the microwave and softening it in there. What that's actually doing is changing the molecular structure of the butter and rearranging the molecules, and it's also making it a liquid. When it says to soften the butter, it means actually mechanically soften. So if you don't have a mixer, you can certainly do it by hand, and cutting it down into smaller pieces will help you. And also, just as kind of a disclaimer for the videos, I do have my mixer off to the side a little bit. That's so you can see it a little bit better, but for safety, really you would want to be looking at your mixer straight on. So at this time, just turn it on nice and slow and start creaming the butter out. And all I'm doing is starting to soften it mechanically. After this has been done and softened, I'm just going to scrape down the side. Using a KitchenAid or any other mixer, a lot of times they'll have a little bell on the bottom of the mixing bowl. It's always important that when you mix down the sides of your mixer, that you actually get down to that dome part. And so I just go in here, mix it around, go down to that dome, and make sure all the butter's back on there. And at this point, you can kind of see that the butter is mechanically softened. Again, mechanically does not refer to the microwave. That'll mess you up every time. Although there are some cookie recipes out there that if you like a chewy cookie, that you can use that. Since it is softened, at this time I'm going to add my 2 sugars. I'm going to use this is a pure cane sugar, and not a beet sugar, it's just cane sugar. And at the end of this video, we'll also include the recipe for it. And then this is brown sugar. This brown sugar, if you don't know, brown sugar has a little bit of molasses added back into it. Back in the day, before they did that, they would actually stop the refining process and pull out the brown sugar. Now we refine it all the way to a white sugar and add the molasses back into it. I'm going to wipe down the sides. I'm going to get to the bottom, and I just want to make sure that all parts of it are mixed. So that way when I go and scoop my cookies and portion them later, I won't have chunks of butter and everything's equally mixed. The other thing I don't want to do is I don't want to overmix. I don't want to overheat this. Butter is an oil and it has a structure to it. And within that, if I overdo it, then if I overmix it and warm it up too much, it won't make it a proper cookie. The next thing I'm going to add is the eggs. The eggs I'm going to drop in a small quantity, a single batch of cookies. I can add them get one incorporated in there, and then I can add the second. In larger recipes, when it calls for eggs and in a creaming method, you want to add it in 3 sections. You would add 1/3, let it mix in, and then add in another third, let it mix in, then finally add the last third. To The reason you do that is for evenness, consistency, and again, so it stays together the proper way without screwing things up. When we talk about baking and cooking, baking really is about the science and formulas. In fact, if you're really talking to bakers and professional bakers, they refer to their what we call recipes as formulas, and they're even written out into percentages, and we call them baker's percentages. That's why sometimes when you'll take a recipe of your favorite cookie or your favorite bread or your favorite something, and you make it a little bit different, and you want to go, well, you know what, I'm going to double it, because for the holiday seasons, I want to make a whole bunch of cookies and give them to the family and friends, and you double that recipe, and it doesn't come out. The reason it doesn't come out is because of the next things that we're going to add, and that's the chemicals. This one we have the baking soda. And with the baking soda, this is our chemical leavening agent. In other words, this is what's going to make this come up. We will have a little bit of steam inside there, but the primary reaction is from the baking soda. So we take the baking soda, take the salt, which is another chemical, NaCl2, and mix them together with our flour. I'm just going to mix that together. You can even sift it together to really get full and equal amounts. I just don't have a barrel sifter sitting right here. And sometimes we don't have those things at home, and so I like to try to make these as home-proof as possible, yet keep it professional. So at this point, I add my dry ingredients. So the first ingredients also have another significance. That they add tenderness, they add flavor, and they add structure. Now the flour coming in is going to really add the structure to the overall. It's an all-purpose flour. It's not a cake pastry flour. It's not a bread flour. It has a pretty even gluten amount, so you're not going to have like rock, hard, solid cookies. One thing I want you to really look at is that the dough is just starting to come together. I'm going to add my vanilla. I'm going to try to get most of it into the actual thing. But as soon as this comes together, as soon as this dough comes together, just like that, you'll see a little bit of stuff there. So I want to mix that flour down. But this dough is just now coming together. A common problem or a common thing that happens is people overmix the cookie dough, and it takes what gluten or protein that is in the wheat from the flour, and it starts creating these little rubber band strands. And then they make their cookies and put them onto the tray, and they bake them, and they smell delicious, and they come out in the oven, and they look like something that you would use at a golf course, because they come out round, and that's not what we want. So you can see in there that the dough has just come together, and at this point, I'm going to add my chocolate chips. I'm going to spin it a couple times and stop. So no more mixing needed. So again, that's a very fast process of that dough coming together. Again, a lot of times people will take and overmix that. And if you've ever like turned out your cookies, you're like, man, they're like golf balls. That's what happened. Either two things. You could have overmixed your ingredients, or you could have used the wrong flour, or wrong measurements just in general. Remember, baking is more about the science and following the formula. At this point, we can take this, and if we're ready to mix it now and ready to portion it out onto paper or parchment or a silpat, if you have it, we'll bake it at convection. We'll bake it at 335 degrees. In a standard conventional oven, we'll bake it at 350 degrees. Notice there's a 15-degree variance there because of the convection. Convection means it just has a fan in the back of it. The one thing, if you're doing it at home and you have one of the newer convection ovens, they're called a smart oven. They take into calibration that you're reading a recipe that calls for 350 degrees degrees, and it will automatically lower your temperature. So you want to check into that and make sure that if you have a smart oven at home, that you set it for 335 degrees because it's convection. It's going to think that you're setting it at 335 degrees because the recipe called for it, and so you might have to override it. I hope this was helpful. We'll show you in just a few minutes what these cookies look like. Now that these are all portioned out, you may not have an oven this size at home, and so it might be on smaller cookie sheets. So that's no problem. So whatever size you have, the one thing I want to show you about this is if you just take and push this down just a teeny little bit, ever so gently, this will help in evening the cooking process. If you notice that it's kind of a round dome right now, I found this trick to work really well. In fact, I've made this whole batch before in one large cookie as just a joke for a friend. And one of the things that what we did is we actually almost made it like a donut in the middle because it takes a little bit longer for that middle to cook. So this was just a little bit more exaggeration so you can see it. But really you're just taking the top part of the dome off so you get an even cooking. So now it's time to put them in the oven. Now's the exciting time. As the smell has filled up the house or the kitchen, when you open your oven, this is what you should see. Now, one of the things that you want to look closely for, and another mistake that can happen, is the cookies can get overcooked. One of the things that you do is you actually pull your cookies right before they're done. As they sit on this hot metal, whether it be a cookie sheet or something like that, it's going to continue to cook. And so you want to make sure you pull them just a little underdone. And so as these sit here, they will complete cooking. The other thing is, just a little couple tricks here, is one, if you pull them out of the oven and you know that they're just a little bit done, you could slide the parchment, silpat, or something off onto a cooling rack, or if by chance you have a marble counter, tile, or something that's colder, you can pull them off and put them on that. That will help stop the cooking process. One of the things that we'll do as a trick is we'll take washers, commonly found at a hardware store, and with the high amount of fan that's in an oven, it can actually blow the actual paper up and crust in or go into your cookie. So we just put that washer in those different places on the thing where that may happen. I hope this has been helpful. Just let them cool long enough, grab yourself a glass of milk, and have a nice day.